So now the plan of attack is to undo everything we just did and get figuring out some motor mounts. Gonna need a little piece of cardboard. So the next step is to get these cut out. I'm gonna pull the motor and then grind these for weld. Three and 9/16. Write that down so I remember it. And our opening on the frame is about 3 7/8. There we go. Now I'll figure out how much of a shim I need for there, and then when I go to put this back in, it'll be shimmed where it needs to be to tack those motor mounts on.
Hi guys, this is Madison. I'm going to be doing the voiceover in today's video. So here he is drilling the holes for the motor mounts. He ended up making a little design flaw with this that I will end up explaining later on. Also, the audio cut out at some point while he was drilling, and he ended up not noticing until after.
Alright, so Madison got a little nervous doing the voiceovers and kept messing up, so I'm taking over from here. The design flaw starts right here with drilling these holes, and later on this will make sense to you, but it involves the holes on these motor mounts, and looking back at it now, I wish I could have caught this sooner, but it's over and done with now, and they ended up still working. So
Alright, so I just ground the slag off with my little Milwaukee die grinder here. Now what I'm going to do is line these holes up, and then I'm going to put a vice grips on them, and then I'm going to go to the belt sander and sand all this uniform. And the reason I'm clamping them together and doing them together is so they're symmetrical, so they each will match side to side. So I think they're going to fit pretty decent. I took these to the belt sander and got them pretty uniform. Now I'm going to take my little die grinder and just clean these sharp edges up a little bit. There will be some fine tuning at the end before they get welded, but just so I don't cut myself while I'm test fitting them and whatnot.
Alright, so here's where the design flaw that Madison was talking about earlier comes into play. I measured the diameter of the factory swing arm bolt, and then I drilled the motor mount holes to that size, but then I could not find a bolt that big in diameter but that short in length. So I ended up having to utilize these collared bushings to go through the motor mount into the engine, where if I knew about this ahead of time, I could have just drilled the motor mount holes smaller so that just the bolt had to go through the motor mount, and then the bushings could have went into the engine cases. But it all works out in the end. It still does its job, it still works, it's just serviceability is a little lower with this setup.
Flip this around. There should be zero interference with that. This is where we're currently at. That alignment is like perfect. So we're ready to tack this in. I'm going to tack it up. Then I might do little stitch welds on each side, just weld what I can. And then I'm going to leave the motor in there, and then I'm going to start working on the exhaust. I want to get that expansion chamber figured out, how that's going to snake up through there. And then once I get the exhaust figured out, then I can worry about the front motor mount and making the motor mount work around the exhaust, because the exhaust I can only do so much with, you know, without like completely redoing the exhaust. So that's where we're at. This needs to get cut off yet, and then obviously I got to clean this stuff up and get all the remaining weld and these little plates off, and I'll take a flap wheel and clean it up. And then I think as of right now the tentative plan is to just find a spray paint that is close to this and just touch up these spots like here and here, and then the motor mounts just for this season, because I have 35 days, I think it is now, 34 or 35 days until the first ice race of the season, and that is my goal. I mean, if I don't meet that goal, I guess whatever, but I don't want to miss the whole ice season when the whole reason I'm building this is to pretty much ride it on the ice.